Alright, so I figured maybe at the end of, well, I don't want to say every month because I don't know. Maybe I'll get too tilted to continue hitting the game as hard as I've been, but since I did play a decent amount this month, I figured we'd do like an end of the month review on Tierlist for everything essentially. So where I ended up, granted there's still maybe 15 hours or so left before the reset, but roughly I'll be most likely at least top 10 in the async. Who knows? And then I think I was like top 40 in sync. So decent results. Obviously not the top player or anything, but enough that I feel this tier list should provide some value. They're just my opinions, of course, and for a lot of this stuff, I'm just going off of general feel, just how they felt. I tried to crunch some data by going through my history and manually, painstakingly run some stuff, and I only really ended up getting some okay data on heroes, so I don't really have data to support most of these decisions. It's all just my opinions and feelings, so we'll get to it here. Alright, so we'll just say S, A, B, C, D, and maybe we'll make an F as well. So F, we'll reserve that for the stuff that I'm like really low on. D, you'll at least have situations that are okay, or if you're forced into it, it's not the absolute end of the world. So it's going to do probably units first. So I already, okay, you can see I sorted for of them up here because I was kind of playing around with them. I think with a lot of these, it'll kind of, probably give or take within a few. Like I could probably put Al in S or A. Maybe when I'm done, I start rearranging these. I do feel like it's potentially an S tier 2-drop though. I mean, obviously the biggest downside is that it costs mana, and the very first time you get it, it might be a little weak, like it's not on the level of a frog, but out of the 2-drops in the game, it's probably the one that's most likely to stay potentially to the very end of the game. So I think on that alone, it should be an S. Just the potential for it is so good, and the speculation on taking it if it doesn't end up working out is really not the end of the world, so I feel like it's S. And Puck is also probably similar value, I would say. I think that, if you think about it, it's 12 damage guaranteed. I mean, not necessarily guaranteed, but if you're running it in slot 1 or 2, probably guaranteed that you're doing 12 damage with this unit, which is quite a good stat line for a 3-drop unit. And then the upside is just really high with this, similar to Owl. It really facilitates a smooth transition into the star build, which is probably the most consistent thing in the game. I should also mention I'm making these tier lists mainly based on sync, or mainly based on async, not sync, because async is the most fresh in my mind. So this list would probably look a little different for sync, but I think most people, from what I see, most people play async. So I actually find that I just wanted to do a tier list more geared toward async. And then in async, I do think stars is the most consistent way to get a good placement. Even if you don't win, it will usually prevent you from getting bottom 4. Sometimes you'll still get 5th, but I don't know. It's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to like bottom out with a star build, and this is one of the best ways to facilitate it. It's another unit that will probably, in a lot of cases, end up in your end game as well if you end up leaning into that archetype. You get there's a 3-cost star treasure which can make it just scale a bunch, but even beyond that, if you get an Oberon, however you pronounce him, you're gonna like to have Puck to kind of give you a second wind on your stars. If you can put it behind like a duelist or a wolf. Those are all good things to do. And then not much to say about sheep. It's actually a 2/4. This is kind of an outdated graphic, but 2/4 for a 2-drop that has no real synergy. It's okay. I would put it in F if it was still a 2/3. I'd put it in an F. The only reasons that keeps it out of F are that it's an okay hit with Bruni, which is a character I am taking decently often in async, just because I do need that early game help, and there just often isn't better choices than Bruni. So yeah, just get defaulted to Bruni. So there are some okay situations for it, but overall it's a very unenticing unit and it's very bad. Now this one, even though I could maybe see an argument for D, I can't really put it in anything higher than F when it literally has never done anything for me. This unit is like, you see 2 of them in your shop, and it's like the more and more you see of that in your shop, the more and more your level 2 is going to suck, probably. It's just such an unusable unit early game, and then there's not really much upside anyway. Like, in some weird cases, you can have it be tempo, but by the time you can actually fill your hand with units, the stat line isn't even that good anyway, so it seems very F tier for me. Now we gotta go down here, and Bluebell. I tend to say A tier for Bluebell. It's, if I compare it to, the only time it's bad is if it's your very first choice, but even then it can be an okay thing to take. Obviously your star won't go off, but by the time you're to the second round, usually that star goes off, so it's 4 damage out of a unit. 3 of that being ranged, essentially. Which, I mean, you compare that to the ranged 2-drop. That one, whatever her name is, Songstress. It's just better in most cases, in my opinion. And then there's also the... Sometimes it is part of your endgame build if you have an Oberon. Uberon. How about, let's go with Uberon. Let's go with the only one that's for sure wrong. Having your stars go off in 3 turns is a lot better than having them go off in 7. And you can give up a little damage there if most of your damage is coming from Oberon anyway. So it's just a really good unit to have. It's good tempo early, and an okay one to just sit in your hand for the speculation of late game. You'll definitely beat the mirror match star matchup, usually, if you're using that instead of Star Child. And honestly, just a lot of builds you'll beat because you're going to smash through their stuff before they can do anything. And Board Farmer, I don't know. Maybe C, but it's technically a lot of stats for 2, but like it falls off so fast, and it's obviously the problem with the game early is like there's just a sweet spot of only like maybe 1 or 2 rounds where it's okay. Probably the 3rd round. Like in the 2nd round, you have to basically hit the spell that gives you gold for health for this to actually get the full value. Otherwise, it's just like the worst version of a booster. And even then, I would argue that a booster usually is giving more value than this in almost every case. So it's pretty bad, and it's a 0-1 with the stat. If it was a 1-1 with the stat line, it still wouldn't be good. There's just a lot going against this this unit. That being said, it's still, every now and then I'll add it because it's better than like a monkey. But yeah, not very good. And then this one, it almost deserves its own tier of S. It's so broken, and it blows my mind anyone would say otherwise. Like, there's sometimes I'll bring up, I'm getting to the point where I don't even bring up balance concerns anymore on the Discord, because it's just like, all right, I am living in a different world than the rest of the community or something, because like I don't know how anyone could think that this thing is balanced. Even with the upcoming nerf of a measly 1 health, it's just so objectively the best 2-drop. The only downside is that it's not so good at combining for a 2-cost treasure, which is like, whatever, 2-cost treasures aren't that good. I always try to suggest upgrades to 2-cost treasure, and so people are like, oh my god, that'd be so OP. But, so again, I just give up on the balance ideas. Like, I'll let them sort that out. Clearly, they don't want they don't want me in part of the discussion, but, fuck it. But yeah, the truth of the matter is, there's, 6 spells at level 2, and 3 of them activate this thing, and 2 of them give you another shot to find the thing that activates. So between the free roll, the only spell in the early game that doesn't have some direct way to help popping this is the one that gives your hero attack. The other one is free roll, which will just give you another chance to find one of the, the 50-50 at getting the spell that targets it. Or the sacrifice health for gold, which is essentially like a free roll in the context of searching for a spell to pop this thing. So it's like the frog always pops most of the time. Maybe you go one round without it popping, but and then once it pops, it's just ridiculous. It's anywhere from a 5-5 to a 7-7 or an 8-8. And then they buff the other royals too. It's just so ridiculously good. It buffs and since your boosters are royals, then it puts them out of the range of the parrot. Granted, in an upcoming patch, the parrot is getting buffed, so at least it can, in the case of having 1 prince, you can kill the booster. Although, if you have 2 princes, you still can't kill it. Prince is just objectively the best 2-drop in the game, and it's not even particularly close. But yeah, the only downside is if I compare to Owl or Bluebell, those have obviously more likelihood to last into the late game. But that's not necessarily the biggest thing I would judge a 2-drop by, especially in async, where when you don't have Prince and every other board does, I'm not exaggerating here, you will lose at least a third of your health through by the time you're level 3, if you're facing a bunch of princes and you don't have good tempo units. The only way you can deal with a prince if you don't have your own prince is probably the Sword Squire. And even then, if they have their own parrot, yeah, goodbye. And then there's the Angel Cat. This is one that's kind of dropped in my rankings this latest patch because, I don't know, the Angel Commander got nerfed. It didn't seem like that big of a nerf, but it certainly doesn't seem that great anymore of a unit, the Angel Commander. Still though, I mean, a 3-4 is the best stat line you'll get, kind of, if we're ignoring Prince there, for a 2-drop as far as an immediate drop goes. So it's generally going to be the best thing, one of the better 2-drops to find. And it could still stay on your board through level 4 if you do find some angel stuff. Granted, it's still going to be not in your final board almost ever. So it doesn't have a whole lot of staying power, but it's definitely in the better half of 2-drops. I'm not sad to see it. We're not going to say the Summoned Cat. I'm probably a lot lower in this unit than others, just because I'm not really looking to go dwarves. Granted, it is nice to have 1-cost items, but I'm often selling them ASAP to pick up better units, and then once that happens, this is a 1-1, so I don't really think it's a very good unit, but still, at least it can have a temporary upside, unlike Baby Monkey. And every now and then, if I do end up in full dwarfs, it is a unit that could last quite a while on my board, because it has a decent effect if you do the thing. This unit is very situational on how I would rank it. I think because I'm not looking to go dwarfs that often, especially I don't force them early, it just typically isn't a unit I use. But technically, if you're someone that really hard forces dwarfs, or if dwarf is the best in a meta, then this thing skyrockets to an A or an S. So, we'll put an asterisk mark next to this one, but I will say, in my latest month of playing, I hardly ever took the unit, so I can't really rank it that high. And the Songstress, It's okay. I find it a little bit overrated, but it's certainly an okay unit to have. It's ranged. It's the only one that's ranged, unless you count Bluebell. I kind of count Bluebell, but it only really beats Bluebell if it's the first unit you take, and even then you need a 50-50 for it to do its job. And also, it can outdo it if you find the Sword Squire. It only outdoes it slightly, though, and again, it has to not get 12.5 or whatever. Or what, it's usually a higher chance than 12.5 that it gets sniped because you're generally not running 4 units up front. So I definitely think that but it's a unit with certain heroes that you're definitely happy to see, like Brother Gambler or Bearskin, stuff like that. Demeter. Granted, I don't actually like any of those characters in the current patch, but if you have any way to buff this unit, then it's pretty good. So it's definitely in the better half of 2 drops. And then the Retriever, it's a tough one. I tend to go D here because, I don't know. I take it about as much as I take these Ds, and honestly, as I look at these Ds, I'm going to up the Sheep to C, because honestly, I take the Sheep infinitely more than any of those D tier units. So we're going with, and I don't know. I guess the problem is, I don't think Tracking Dog is amazing. So the only thing it really synergizes with relevantly would be that or itself. There's been rare times I do end up, if I see 2 dogs, I have to see 2 dogs in the same shot for me to want this. And that's the only thing that keeps out an F for me. It will never last on your board because, there's only 1 dog in the 3rd level. Granted, I do think that dog is a good unit, but the aura is, pretty irrelevant, I would say, to it. Because the unit itself is so weak that it's you're providing an aura at the cost of basically playing down a unit if you're going to run it through level 3 or 4. So there's no staying power for this unit, and it's not that good of a tempo unit early on anyway. Think about how many dogs you have to even match one single prince. It's not even remotely close. So D tier there, borderline F. And the cat, yeah, I would say B. It is similar to Songstress, where if you don't have a Sword Square to go with it, it's pretty useless. Though it's okay with some characters like Dame Gothel that have an early attack buff for the resummon. So it's definitely somewhat okay, but if you don't find the Sword Square, it's not very good. It's just a 2 damage unit that can survive 2 hits, and that's just not that relevant, especially into stuff like the Prince. The Prince could eat 3 of them for breakfast, and still have some diet left, still have some hunger left over. But the upside there, it has a lot of upside. It fits into a lot of builds. It facilitates cats. It facilitates just resummoning shenanigans. It works very well with a lot of treasures. It's a unit that has no inherent value. It's like the opposite of the Angel Cat or the Sheep here. It's the base stats suck, but the upside of it is much better than those units. So it's ranked around the same overall level, but for completely different reasons. And then the Goose. I gotta be honest, I am not as high on Goose as everyone. And it even got nerfed to a 2-1 since this picture was taken. I don't know. Maybe it's just an async thing. Maybe it's better in sync. But in async, I just don't find that I can take that tempo loss of having a relatively useless unit as far as combat goes. I'll admit, if you can upgrade the thing, it is very good later on, or if you can find Broker's Brooch or whatever. But I just find the games that I'm taking Goose, I am probably losing a lot of health, and it's just not worth it to get that power spike of gold later on. It can be. It just isn't consistently worth it, shall we say. I have definitely noticed I take it probably more than I should, And I have a lot of early losses to my name that I could probably attribute it in large part to Goose. Obviously, there's a lot that goes on in any one game. You can't blame everything on one thing. Sometimes you can, but I would say it certainly didn't help me in those games that I lose early on. So I find it about C tier. It's a unit I will take, but I never am reaching for it. Like for me, the C's are the stuff I only take when the shop wasn't too good, and I'm like, well, this is probably the top of the bad choices. I'll still gladly take them over any of these D's. But yeah, it's not very. I think it's one of the more overrated units in the game. And then the Sword Squire, I would say A probably. I lean toward A or B. It just depends on the units. It's always gonna be probably somewhat useful. It's also a unit that pairs best with the prince. So if you can pair that with the prince, you're gonna absolutely wreck people. Otherwise, it doesn't. It needs some help because health isn't as important as attack, I would say, unless you actually have something like that already has a lot of attack, like the prince. But as far as 2-drop goes, nothing else really has a lot of attack, So unless you're pairing with another Sword Squire or something like that, or it's just as far as the two costs go, it often isn't going to put you over the edge against other people running the prince. Whereas a Sword Squire, on the other hand, will actually allow you to compete with the prince if you don't have one. And it's probably I might as well do that one right now. Instead of the others. Like, it's no surprise I would put the Sword Squire in the S for sure. The S, if I compare the two boosters, both are very enticing, but the Sword Squire is definitely better. It pairs way better with the cat. It deals with everything at the 2 cost so much better. And it's more likely to last on your board through like level 3 than the Squire is, or even level 4 sometimes, if it's upgraded. It's a very, very good 2-drop. And then we got the Demon. I don't know, it just sucks that it costs health. Health is a valuable resource. I'm more than willing to pay it to get gold early so I can get an extra unit, because overall that's going to save me health. But this thing, I don't know, really saves me health because it has attack. It's the other thing that does actually pair well with shield page, so like it is good for that. And similar to the sheep, it's something I really do want to find on Bruni. But and it has some synergy, similar to the angel synergy with demons. But I wouldn't say it's any better or worse of synergy, because I don't know, I'm probably more likely to do a demon build than an angel build, but not to any great degree. And if I do go a demon build, this unit doesn't last that long anyway. It actually, I'd argue, lasts less long than the other angel, because with the demons, the 3-cost demons and the 4-cost demons are such a drastically step up that those are just always going to make the board over this one. And then you're probably, even with the enchantments, you're just better off fielding a different unit, even if it's not a demon, than this, once you get to that mid-game. Whereas that's not really the case with the angel a lot of the time. But yeah, I think C tier, it costs health, which is the main downside. That stat line would be okay if I didn't have to pay health for it. It still would only be like a C tier if I didn't have to pay health for it. Let's put it that way. Or a B tier. And then this is another one I think I'm pretty lower than people on. Smiling Sprout. It just doesn't really give you the stats that you need. I think I've already said it before, but attack is much more important than health, especially in the early game. And this thing scales its health decently, but it does not scale its attack decently. So, like, it can be okay to put in front of a sword squire, but I don't know. It just isn't. It takes too long to get going. If it's your very first unit, maybe it's okay. Even then, I find it pretty overrated. I would definitely just take, like, why wouldn't I just take any of these over it? Like even an Angel Cat. How long is it going to take Smiling Sprout to grow into the stats that an Angel Cat is? And there's not really any upside with the unit either. You know, New You on 2 drops isn't that good to cast. I find, and it's just not a whole lot for it. There's no Tree Ant synergy in the game right now. Maybe if there is Tree Ant synergy, eventually this unit could find reasons to be enticing. Still, it's obviously better than the D tier, but it's very C tier to me. I'm not going to rank the frog because we already kind of did that. Now we're to the 3 drops. This is probably one I have the hardest time evaluating, is this ranged sorceress. I don't think mages is good, but I think that it's usable if you find the right stuff, but it's also not horrible to use an owl and one of these early game and just cast any enticing spell you see. And it's okay tempo in that scenario. And then there's the upside of if you do end up going some mage treasures or whatever, then they'll just have lasting power. They may even stay all the way till the end game. And I should mention, even if you do find some mage support, you don't have to stick in mages. I just had a game off the record, or off recording I should say, where I did a game where I had very large mages. I even had the Crystal Maiden. I was that far into mages, but then I completely pivoted to a farmer build, for example, and they just sort of slowly pivoted out of the build because they just don't have the upside that typically the better meta stuff has. So it's okay just to have them as tempo units to get you through the game until your end game. But very hard for me to evaluate this one, because this one, obviously, you have to commit to it for it to be worth it. Otherwise, you're taking a 3-drop that has horrible initial stats. That kind of comes down to the same thing as this dwarf. It just comes down to playstyle. It's like, do you find yourself going some sort of mage line or some dwarf item line? More often than not, they're going to be good. If not, they're going to be bad. And this one's pretty bad. The only time I really take it is if I have like an immutable idol, and it's nothing about the unit itself that's good there. It's just that it's a ranged unit. If I compare this to the other 3-drop that I just mentioned, they're night and day different. This does start technically with 1 more attack and 1 more health. Ooh-wee. It's a million times more harder to actually gain stats on this fucking thing than it is to simply cast spells. I mean, Slay supposedly is getting buffed in the near future. It is on beta, and I don't know. The only thing I've really seen is that Woman of the Moon is broken, which is like whatever. Still, the early game Slay doesn't really matter. I think this unit would have to gain a 1/1 on Slay for me to actually care about it, or alternatively it should have its own innate Slay effect. That's the only way I could see this unit ever being enticing. Otherwise, it's just one of the worst range units in the game. The trigger for it to scale is something that just doesn't happen that often early, and it also, if you're taking Slay units, the only good one in my eyes is the Parrot. And if you're taking the other 3-cost Slay unit, that's just such a bad unit that you're taking a bad unit to try to make another bad unit less bad. And that's the best you can hope for, is that it's less bad. It's never good, in my experience. But still D, because it unfortunately is the best thing you can get in some scenarios. I'm also not putting these in any particular order, you can notice. Maybe we'll rearrange them later, but I'm just tacking them on to the end in each case. So, Egg, what do we even say about it? It's hilariously broken. You know, it'd be a different story if it just died in one go, kind of like the old SBB game, Egg. Maybe even 2 goes, I wouldn't like it as much, but the fact of the matter is you can just put it in, even if it dies even if it dies 3 times, still that's like just 15, 12 stats for 3 gold. Come on. What even compares to that? Nothing compares to that. And it's annoying to go against. You're going to see it all the time in async. So it's like, if you don't have your own, be prepared to lose health. If you didn't high roll something or you don't have your own, be prepared to lose health. Because you will. And hard for me to rank this one. I think similar to this one, if I were to often do something that utilize this unit, then it's a good unit. I just don't find I utilize it that much. It's hard for me to, because here's the thing. When I'm looking at a shop, and if I see something that in most situations is not good for me, then I don't rank it very high. And that's how I feel about this unit. When it's good, it's great. I just don't find that I have enough items. Usually it's like, you know, I'll try to pick up 1 gold items here and there, but I don't find that they're that plentiful for whatever reason. I don't know if that like changed at some point, because I felt like they used to be more plentiful, but so if I didn't specifically say, hey, I'm going dwarfs, why would I ever pick this up? Because initially it's a horrible unit. It's a 2-3. Yeah, it's unyielding, and it might give a few stats to something, but overall compare it to the likes of an Egg, for example, and you can see the massive difference here. So I will admit, though, it's good at what it does if you can manage that. But you have to commit a lot of resources to it. It also means you're probably not getting any treasures. That's a similar downside to you're gonna combine less units when you use units like these, you know, because you're spending resources on things that are not units. You're spending them on items, or you're spending them on spells. The only difference is there's no such thing as a free item. There is such thing as free spells. So I just find that there's less resource sink for going some mage stuff than there is going dwarf stuff, which is probably why I rank them as such. Now here's a unit that used to be very good. I don't think it's all that different than the other cat here. Now I'm tempted to put it in C tier, certainly based on pick rate. I would probably do that, because here's the thing. Through the 2nd level, there's only 1 unit on here that synergizes, or through the 3rd level, it's still only this level 2 unit that makes it worth fielding. Yes, there are some rare cases where you get a treasure. You know, say I'm amateur and I get like a mana catalyst or a power bag, then sure, I can use it without the booster. But other than that, you really do need this booster for it to ever be worth running. Now, it does have some upside because the upgraded version is pretty ridiculous if you have a build that can use it. That's probably the only reason I'm keeping it out of C tier, is because of the upside. If you do have a cat build, and honestly, it's really good at scaling the cat choir, and if you do get the full cat build at the end, sometimes it even lasts all the way to the end, because it's filling up an entire 4 slots of cats if you can get it to die at the right moment. And if you have stuff like the aura cat, the cat queen or whatever, or even like a summoning treasure, whatever it's called, then for a 3-drop you'd be hard pressed to find much more value. So we're ranking it more on the upside and some of the synergies that it has. As a baseline unit, though, not that good. If you don't have anything that synergizes with it, it ain't there. And then, I don't know. This is a very hard one to rank, because there are situations where it's amazing. But it's another thing where you obviously have to have synergies. You're not gonna, you're almost never going to get the sleigh at 2/1. And trying to do that is usually a big fail in async. You know, it's even a fail a lot of the time when you have stuff boosting it. You know, I've had a lot of games where I boost it with like an upgraded sword square and it still can't get a kill. You know, problem is it has 1 health, so it'll die to any AoE spell. So it needs support there. It has 2 damage, so it's not going to kill anything. It needs support there. And then even if it does slay, it may not give you something useful, because let's be honest, most 4s suck. But there are some ridiculously good 4s as well. Now, the most enticing thing is if you have a mutable idol. If you have a mutable idol, this thing is god tier. Otherwise, I find it middling and very speculative. It's a very, very greedy play to do it, but greedy plays aren't necessarily the wrong thing. But in async, they often are. In async, they just often are. So I can't go higher than C on it, even if it is a fun unit a lot of the time. I mean, Consti is right there with Ori, I feel. The thing with Consti is at least I can take a Consti outside of a Dwarf build sometimes, and it's okay. I mean, a 7/7 for 3 is not the worst thing in the world, but it's certainly not the best. And it also has no upside in terms of being able to gain stats, so if you're like Demeter or anybody like that, it obviously isn't very good. It's basically untakeable on Bearskin. However, even outside of a Dwarf build, if I see this along with like the dagger, the yellow dagger that sucks, the vampiric dagger or whatever, then I would take that. That's good at outside of a Dwarf build. That's good at anything. It'll just be a unit that gains stats every fight, and then you can transition those stats to another unit later on. That's a good deal. So there is upside with Consti. It's a horrible unit to transform into. I hate that interaction. But it just feels about C tier to me. Not that enticing in a lot of playthroughs to see Consti in my shop. I guess I'll go B on crew member. I'm still tempted to go C on it. Obviously, whenever pirates are good, then this skyrockets, but it still is okay as a tempo piece. I don't know though, you know, as I look at this, I'm gonna go C. I think just most of the time I'm not interested in crew member. If you find it right as you go to level 3, it's not horrible. Or maybe second turn of level 3, because you're not really fielding a full... here's the problem though, if you're not fielding a board anyway, then you're not getting much from putting something in your bench. What it really excels at is if you do have a good booster, which really there's only going to be those 2 drops, at least early on. And then it's like, yeah, it's basically the same deal as these cats, but it still has a downside of having to play down a unit. It is a unit, though, later that you can tech. Like, I can use it to do a makeshift wolf, essentially, like for a 6-drop. So I could use it, for instance, to protect a Dr. Frankenstein. So it has some uses later on. I'll be honest, though, I just don't... Even like a Consti gives me better tempo, typically, than a crew member will. So, like, tempo-wise, it's just not that good. Very hard for me to rank it that high. Sometimes, though, if you can get it along with a Pirate Cook, then that's worth doing. But still, you had to see like both of them in the shop. I'm not going to speculatively take one or the other. And that's really the only way I end up with that unit typically. Now, this is a really good 3-drop, I think. It's okay. It's about a Consti worth of stats after all. I think it's like a 7/6 naturally just by itself. But then obviously it does cost mana, which sucks, but you know, it synergizes with another one of itself. It synergizes with this unit, and it synergizes with this unit. And those are units that show up often enough that if you take this, even speculatively, you'll probably find them, and they're not, like I said, it's a unit that's okay on its own anyway. And then it just sort of has a really good effect if you do happen to keep finding demons. And it can facilitate you toward a scam build, which honestly is an okay build for async. It's very dependent at level 5, though, on finding that 5-cost demon. If you don't find that, you'll have a very weak level 5, and you'll usually die, is the biggest downside I find. It's night and day when you do a demon build that wants to transition to scam. Level 5 is very important there because level 3 and 4 are very powerful for demons. 5 completely hinges on if you find that 5-cost demon or not. And if you do, you're going to stomp everybody. If you don't, you're going to get stomped. That's kind of been my experience with demons. It's not a high A tier for this unit. Like, I would say like it's teetering on A or B. And then this unit, I don't know. It could go B. I'd probably put it B. It's a unit that I hate because it just makes my other units worse, right? 2 of them are going to get a 1/1 reduced, but hard to deny a 10/6 stat for 3 being that bad. It's still way worse than the egg, though, for example. It's like 2/3 the attack, 1/2 the health, while also reducing a bunch of stats, but at least it has a synergy of the demon stuff. I don't know, maybe it's a C tier. I think I've taken it enough, though, over these other 3 drops in the C tier that it probably is B tier. But it's not one I like. Even when I'm running demons, it still feels annoying because you're usually not running a completely full demon board even through level 3. And the units that you don't have as demons get sapped pretty hard. But that is what it is. That's the price you pay for that unit. I think Plowman, every now and then it can pop off, but I usually find it's kind of a fail. I think the problem with it is like it only procs off character attack. Like if it was similar to the tree, the 3-cost tree, then I'd be all about it. Like if hero attack procced it, if spells procced it, if stars procced it, but none of them proc it. Only characters attack proc his ability, which kind of sucks ass, unfortunately. And I believe he has to survive the damage. I don't take him enough to know his exact mechanics. All I know is that he's very underwhelming, but I guess I would still want him over like the Slay unit. Not that much, though. Not that much. I'm tempted to go D with it, but I feel like you can get... If you boost it with health, it's okay. I don't know. It's very close to D tier, but I'll leave it in C for now. We'll see. Hansel, here's a unit that used to be amazing, I felt. I just don't run... It comes back to the dwarf thing. Like, I'm not running hunters enough for this to ever matter. Like, it'd be a unit that is okay to have in your hand later. In the closed beta days, this was like a S tier unit for me because hunters was like my go-to almost just by default. And also, like, tracking dog gave extra attack. Everything was just really good for Hansel, but I don't find him that good anymore. He's, at best, just going to 1-for-1. And most of the time, he doesn't even do that. Against any of the solid 3 tiers, he's not even going to 1-for-1. And there's not enough ways early on to increase your attack for me to care about this unit. And then, as we said, the hunter builds just aren't that enticing, so he doesn't have like that staying power that you might typically have. But he's very meta dependent. If hunters are meta, then he's an okay pick. And then, I don't know. This used to be S for sure, this angel one. Like I said, the nerf wasn't that big on paper, but in practice, I've been pretty unimpressed with Angel Commander lately in async. You know what, though? I'd probably have to put it in the same level as the Demon Enchanter. They're They're not the exact same because I think that Demon is more viable than Angel long term. But I don't go Demons that much, let's put it that way. And I never go Angels. But for tempo purposes, I use them about the same. So Commander's worse than the Demon, but not by enough of a margin that it's a different tier. I think another problem with it is there's just not as many Angels as there are Demons. You know, there's only the 2-cost Angel. There's only the 3-cost Angel. There's only a 4-cost Angel. There's no 5-cost Angels. So, like, that would be the relevant times to have Angelic Commander doing something for you. So there's just not as many hits either for it, which makes me almost want to put it to B. I think it's a B tier. Yeah, it is B tier. Farmer is not as good as Egg, but still very good. Very enticing 3-drop to have. I mean, they're essentially the same idea. They come in and they give you immediate help, and then you don't, you know, it kind of falls off, but they don't have to fall off, and they have their own ways of not having to fall off. You know, the Egg, if it's surviving, obviously doesn't fall off, or if you triple the Egg, it doesn't fall off. Now, with the Farmer, survival's not an issue. Tripling gives it about the same staying power, I would say, but the difference with the Farmer is that if you do have the Dog to combo with it, it will last for quite a while. So I think they're about similar. I'd prefer an Egg, but not by much. They're both the best general tempo 3-drop units to get. Pirate Cook is a unit that, I don't know. That one's very hard for me to rank, because here's the thing. When I have it working, it's a ton of actual value. It's an amazing tempo unit. The problem is it's so situational. There's literally only one unit at the 3-cost that works with it. Only one. There is nothing else in the game. So you have a 3-drop that has only one single unit that works with it. And even then, you have to play down a unit as well. Now, it has some synergy with one 4-drop as well, but again, not many hits here, right? So it's just too situational to be higher than a C, but I will say the times that you can get it to work, it is amazing. Like, it procs on entrance, so you're guaranteed to get its effect. And if you can be fortunate enough to find multiples of these, it affects your whole hand, so you can actually get quite a lot of stats out of Pirate Cook. But it's just very rare that I can get it to work. It's usually something I don't want to see in a shop. I've become a little bit higher on Pirate Gunner lately. But I don't know if I can give it higher than a C. It's obviously horrible tempo, but in the right situations, it can really do a lot of work. I definitely take it more than Pirate Cook, and I definitely take it more than Crew Member, for example. So, like, should it be B tier? I don't know. I definitely don't take it as much as the B tiers, so it's somewhere in between B and C. Like, if I wanted to start rearranging stuff, I don't really care to, because this is going to take too long, but if I did rearrange stuff, then it would probably be at the top of C. But I don't know. I don't want to give the people the wrong impression to, like, reach for Gunner. I think you only really want to fall into it. Like, it's really good if I'm running, like, an Immutable Idol, for example. But it's also good when I just... It's like really good with Sisyphus, I would say. Like, it has synergy with Sisyphus, and in a certain sense, it's like I don't have to worry about losing a fight or two by running a bad tempo unit if I'm going to scale anyway off that loss, and then I just scale even more by having that. So, like, in that type of situation, it's pretty good. Or if I'm just feel that I'm, for whatever reason, really ahead, it's an okay unit to secure your advantage in a way. But in a way it doesn't. In a way it makes you do less health to the enemy when you could have just been doing damage on them. That's like the conundrum with this unit for me. But I've had it pop off enough times that it's definitely not a D tier unit, but it's somewhere between C and B, I would say. I think I would go with A with the dog. It is an annoying unit to use, but at the end of the day, it's a 7/8 on its own. It synergizes with itself if you have another one of it, but most of the time it's synergizing with a impatient farmer in my experience. But there's a lot of other units it can go with. You know, I've used it with this guy, the whatever plowman. Technically, it could work with the 2-drop dogs. So you compare it to like pirate gunner, for example, and you see there's just so many other units that it actually synergizes with. But the positioning can be awkward. That's the main down. If the positioning wasn't so awkward, it'd be S. But because of the awkward positioning, I give it an A. Not too sad to see it though. It's a pretty good unit. Oh yeah, this unit. I'm gonna go F on this one. It is just too far. It's so bad. Like, it's horrible stats. I mean, it's about the same stats, I guess, as like a Hansel, but at least a Hansel can grow. I hate to say it, but even though there's only one spell that increases my attack early, I would argue that you're more likely to get more benefit out of that. Because keep in mind, if I cast it before I find the Hansel, it still affects the Hansel. I would argue I can get more buffs out of that on my Hansel than I can get slays out of the Fox. And who knows, maybe next patch the upgraded stat line will make it good, but at a 1/1 on slay, this is just hilariously bad. It's hilariously bad. You have to slay, which is a very hard thing to do. It's a very hard thing to do. That's what I want to emphasize. It's very hard to slay. You have to set up your board very specific ways, so this unit takes priority on slots that usually you'd want for a better unit. You know, aka you have to set it up on the left side of your board. And I'd rather just have a ranged unit or a better statted unit over there. So it already occupies good real estate, whereas the Hansel doesn't have to. Yeah, I just think this unit is horrible. I don't need to go into it that much more. The Romeo's a weird one. It's a speculative pick. It's horrible tempo, and it has no immediate upside. Obviously, the only thing it does is it sets you up for Juliet come turn 4. Now, obviously, this used to be a really good unit because the stat line was a lot better on what they gained prior to the nerf. I still think they're okay, though, post-nerf. It's not a unit Here's my thing with Romeo, though. It's not a unit I am generally looking to add, unless I'm a very specific hero. Like, if I am King Midas, then this goes up to, like, S. If I am Demeter or, like, something like that, maybe even a Brother Gambler, then it goes up to, like, A or S. But for everyone else, it's like C or D, because I don't think in a general sense you want to be going for Romeo Juliet. I think that certain heroes you do, but not everyone. So it's just kind of middle. Overall, it averages out to a C, I guess. It's horrible tempo. Horrible tempo as a 3-drop, but it's a speculative pick that can hit often enough. Here's a unit that I thought was broken when it first got buffed, but I've kind of scaled back my opinion of it. I think that when you find 2 of them in your shop, then you're inclined to take them a lot of the time. That bumps them up to an S, but if it's just the one single Snow White, I don't think she's like something that's like, I would only take it if the shop sucked, and then sure, it can work, like, but it puts you down a line that is tough, because here's my thing with dwarfs. Level 4 sucks for them because Heavy kind of sucks. and is the only dwarf at level 4. And even level 5 isn't what it used to be. You know, you used to have Blacksmith, which was broken. Now Blacksmith is like pretty just okay initially. If you can stabilize, he's great. But like, you know, Tempe got a little bit better, but not enough for me to feel that comfortable doing dwarfs. Now, obviously, if you can make a level 6, make it to level 6 and find your level 6 units, dwarfs pop off. But it's iffy on the way there in my experience. Even if you have all of the dwarf stuff going on, I've just had situations where I lose anyway, you know. So maybe just a few of my async experiences have shaped my opinion of dwarfs. That's not something I'm looking to go toward. But another thing worth mentioning is you don't have to go dwarfs to make Snow White work. If you're lucky enough to get a bunch of cheap items offered, then she's worth it. But the problem is sometimes you don't get offered those, and then she's a wasted pick at that point. So I think B tier is accurate. And then Fool, this unit is so bad. Even upgraded, it doesn't even kill a unit. So it's a unit that never 1-for-1s, even in its upgraded form. It's trash. I don't know why. I don't know why this unit. I can't remember if it's getting upgraded in the patch. First thing I would say is like, I would say it kind of needs to do its upgraded version by default as its unupgraded version, and then upgraded, it should basically double what the upgraded version does. Then we got a stew going, you know? Now it's a unit. I still wouldn't even put it maybe B at that point, but, and obviously the problem there is because it's a trickster, then that imbalances Dr. Frankenstein, and Dr. Frankenstein is already annoying enough. Like, do we really want the Fool being a huge hit for it? Probably not. So this unit is doomed to be shitty as long as as long as it is labeled a trickster, this unit is doomed to be shitty. That's what I would say. They would have to like make it not be a trickster for it to work, or Dr. Frankenstein alternatively would have to like not summon it. If that makes sense. So I don't ever foresee this actually being good in the near future, just in its current state. It's just such a horrible unit. And you know, Husky obviously used to be S. I'm actually going to go A on it. You know, it did get nerfed. It's still a very enticing unit to have, but it's very demanding on your positioning. The very first turn it comes in, it's the best, I would say. You know, you get like a 20/20 worth of stats, but then it has to occupy the first slot, and then it has to occupy the 6th slot. Like, these are very prime real estates at that point in the game, I would say. And particularly once you get to the 6th slot, keep in mind the stats are also diminishing at this point. It's kind of down to like a 15 worth of stats by then. So it's more in line with like an egg by that point. Just to put things in perspective how good egg is. But yeah, and there's not like a huge amount of synergies with it. It also was better when a dog build was better. They nerfed Nero pretty hard. He's not unusable now, but I hardly ever do Nero now. If I go farmers, I'm absolutely just going the other farmer build, shall we say. I don't ever do the dogs anymore. Unless I'm forced into it. Sometimes you're desperate. So it kind of, all those things together, I think, bump it to A. Still a very good unit to find, but I wouldn't say it's S anymore. Tanuki, I guess I can bump to a D. It's been F most its life, but I don't know, for sync, or for async, yeah, let's put it to F. It's still just unusable in async. I think for sync, it's like D or C, because in sync, stealth build is king. You have the time to put it together, and Tanuki can facilitate that. You know, obviously it makes your monsters do a lot of damage, and pretty much everything on the way to stealth build is a monster. But on sync, I hardly find myself able to have the time to do a stealth build. you just don't have time to go through level 5 using like a mat. Crab you can use just fine, but like level 5 is the part where you're just like usually having to put stars together or farmers together or something else, fluffs, anything. Like whatever you're doing, it's not buying a mat. Let's put it that way. If you buy a mat, you're probably dying on level 5. So yeah, that just isn't that very good. It needs to gain health as well on its monsters, I think. And here's a unit that used to be like S or A. I just find that by the time I'm level 4, because Angelic Commander is not as enticing to me anymore, I'm just not like doing Angel that much anymore. And even then, if I am doing it, I'll probably take it and it'll be strong for like 2, maybe 3 rounds, but then it falls off again. And then another problem is like as I remove units, if most of your board is angels and you're trying to transition out of it, it's a hard transition to do because the board just gets exponentially worse every angel you remove. Obviously, I didn't use that term correctly, but I'm just going to go ahead and be exaggerating my term I'm using, but yeah, I don't know. It's not that great. I mean, this is a tech piece, so how do you rank a tech piece? The chair, the back protector. Obviously, there's the wall build, which you'll probably never get to pull off in sync or async. I certainly have regretted every time I try to do it. You just don't have time. Similar to stealth, you just don't have the time to put it together a lot of the time. But in sync, it's probably very good. It's still really good in sync as a tech card, though. You know, I use it. Unfortunately, in the Fire Mage is bugged, so it's not that good against Fire Mage. But it's still just kind of good. Like if you have ranged units or tricksters through level 4 or 5, it's certainly a good unit to put in front of them. And you can do a temporary wall build just for tempo, and then transition to something else. It's good stats at any rate. I can't imagine anything lower than a B for it. I could even argue A. But we'll go B. I don't find myself buying it that much. I buy it more once I'm level 6, if anything, just as a tech against flying units. This one's a tough one for me. I suppose A. It's annoying because it's obviously very variant in what it can get you. At least if you're running mages, it'll scale them. But if it's just scaling them and giving you useless spells, it's still not great. I just had too many games where it's only getting me Ice Storm or whatever the fuck it is, just over and over again, and that's obviously useless. That's not helping you out at all. In most cases. So it's like, if that's the spell it casts, then it is obviously not worth 4 gold. However, if it casts God's Rays, then it's amazing for 4 gold. Even if it's just so variant in what it does. But I think the odds are technically in your favor that it should be pretty good. There's a lot better spells than Ice Storm out there, and it should cast them more often than not just based on the odds of good spells versus bad spells that it can cast. Fireball's really good, stuff like that. So the odds are in your favor, but that doesn't guarantee you that it'll do anything for you. And the problem is, when something's not actually guaranteed to do something good for you, then that's hard for me to put in the S. That's hard for me to put in the S. But it's very good. It's very good. And this unit has to be S. I mean, it's just so broken for a 4-drop. There's no build that wouldn't want it. It goes very well in the only thing that goes against it, I guess, is if it gets sniped. That's pretty rough. And it does require prime real estate to function properly, but none of that is enough to put a unit that literally just deletes. It deletes a unit without even getting killed itself. Come on. for 4 gold. That's broken. That's ridiculous. Like, this could be a 6 drop and it would still be worth it. Honestly, though, at a 6 drop, it wouldn't. It'd be like C tier. But just to put it in perspective, it's it's just such a stupidly good unit. I'm gonna go. It's just a cat thing. I don't find myself going cats that often enough for this to be good. It is good if you do it. It obviously just scales usually to like a 100 by level 6, say, and maybe a 200 by mid-level 6, which is a pretty good unit for 4. Yes, some downside is it doesn't immediately make a splash. It takes a fight or two to actually become okay. So that's definitely a big downside. The base stats suck, which is probably why I put it as C. It's like you kind of have to commit to it for it to be worth it. And even then, it's not necessarily the most crazy unit in the game, but it's certainly good at what it does. But what it does is something I'm not looking to do. And then, yeah, Dandelion's broken. This unit is literally better than the 6-drop star units in most cases. It's getting removed, so it's getting moved to Chaos. That just says everything that needs to be said about it. So this is something that, enjoy it while it lasts. Won't be that much longer. And but yeah, what more can I say about it? It's ranged on top of it. Like, even if it wasn't ranged, it'd be S. But the fact that it's also ranged is just kind of hilarious. It gets you so many stars. Like, it's just ridiculous. What more can be said about it? It's like very common to see it in a 6-drop or a 6. It's good for tempo. It's good for an end build. It's good for everything. And then Detective Apprentice, I don't know. Very low C, I would say. Very low C. It is getting upgraded. I am curious if it's literally getting doubled in value for the next patch. So that says everything that it needs to say about it. And I still don't think, from what I hear, it's anything that special. But I guess you could do worse. It's obviously horrible tempo as a 5/3/4 drop. But if you are... I'd say if you're 3 or more, if you have 3 or more attacks on your hero, it's probably okay to take if nothing better exists. But I'm definitely not like chomping at the bit to get that unit. That's not how you scale hero attack, let's put it that way. Watson is how you scale hero attack. Duelist, another one like Chair, where I feel it just qualifies as a tech piece. It's not like an actual cornerstone of any build. It would be in Pirates if Pirates were a thing, which they're not. But it's just a tech piece for cats. It's a tech piece for stars, and it's just a tech piece. I guess it's a tempo piece if you're like Fafnir, or having some treasure like Mana Catalyst. In those scenarios, it's a good tempo piece. It's also, I guess, part of the chair build, if you were to do that, which is irrelevant to me. I'm never going to do that build. I don't have time to do the build. But it's good at what it does, put it that way. But it's not a unit I'm always looking to buy. Like, not every build wants it. So there is some level of situation to it. But the situations in which it's good are pretty good. I guess I go C with this. It's borderline D. I mean, a 7/7 for 4 is fucking really bad. It's countered pretty easily by a plethora of spells or treasures. Yeah, it's probably D. What am I saying? It's a unit that you'd have to build around in order for it to be good, but why wouldn't I just... There's, like, you had to pump stats in it for it to be good, but even then it's not that good. There would need to be, like, additional synergy with barriers in this game for it to be worth it. But there just isn't. Like, remember in Hellfire Tactics, there was actual synergy with barriers. So something like this might work there. So until they add like some treasures or some units or some heroes that actually synergize with barriers, this unit just sucks. It will never be better than, for instance, a Radiant Fairy, which already isn't, I don't think, that amazing of a unit. But for a unit that needs to have stats pumped into it to be good, why wouldn't I just use Radiant Fairy instead, right? And then the fluff. Wait, where was green fluff? Just realized we never saw green fluff. Did I just completely... No, it's just like not here. That's funny. Huh. I wonder what other... I wonder what other units are randomly not on this list. Well, either way, red and green fluff are both about the same to me. They're both like B tier. Maybe I like green more than red, because red I have to have really seen... I'd have to already be in fluffs to take it. So maybe C for red, but I'm going to leave it in B for now, because I actually find in async I go fluffs a decent amount of the time. They're not horrible. They're not like S tier as a comp, but I would put them in like the A or B tier. They're actually okay if you can get them going. Because keep in mind, to win async, you have to have ridiculous stuff, and fluffs technically qualify as that if you get the right build together. Their main downside is the path there is not amazing, because they don't scale fast enough early. So you kind of have to have a really good hero, good treasures, or otherwise good tempo units to supplement your fluffs for them to be good, but that happens decent amount of the time, I would say. You know, you can just speculate. If you speculate on fluffs, it's not the end of the world. They still scale a little bit, and they're better than like this, for example, or this, for example. So I think they're like B. I would put them above the C's, the green and the red one, but they're not enticing. They're not like something I'm chomping at the bit to get. It's more of like, well, this shop sucks, I guess I'll take a fluff, and hopefully it works out. That's usually how fluffs are for me. And this one, even though I don't end up in cats that often, if I do have cats and this is there at 4, it's pretty good. I mean, it's like quite a lot of stats to your entire board. So, yeah, seems decent. This is taking a lot longer than I thought it would, so this is probably... I'll tell you what. We'll complete the... Fuck, there's so many 4s. Alright, I'm gonna call it good here on this video. We're gonna make it a 2-part video for the units, and then I'm gonna do a separate video for each of the other aspects. I had planned on just kind of flying through these, but I'm like, it doesn't make much sense for me to just put a list together if I don't talk about each unit. So, we'll just talk about this unit and call this video good for now. But, yeah, so, I don't know. The initial stats obviously aren't that good. It's just, you know, if you have, like, I would say 2 or more cats getting summoned every turn, this unit is worth it. I mean, that's pretty much better than, like, a Haymaker at that point. And a Haymaker is obviously very good, so you'd obviously want that if that's what you got going on. But obviously, if you don't have any cats, it's a horrible unit, so it's most of the time just useless. But I think I would rank it similar to fluffs. It's like the situation comes up enough that I will take it, and when I take it, it's gonna be very good most of the time. So, yeah, that's the sleeping cat or whatever the hell it's called. So that'll do it for this one. We'll resume later. Until next time, to be continued.